Nike Pegasus Trail 2 or Altra Lone Peak 5.0? Which one should you buy? Here we go. Hey everybody, it's Zach, your YouTube foot doctor, and today we got our head-to-head performance review, the Nike Pegasus Trail 2 and the Altra Lone Peak 5.0. We're gonna put these things through the gauntlet today, including, tearing them open and seeing really what those midsoles are made of. And if you wanna see your favorite shoe go through the knife, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss your favorite shoe next. Now, starting with the uppers, both these shoes have a mostly mesh upper. The real differences come in the breathing channel placement and the ankle collars. Now, the breathing channels in the Ultras are just at the distal tip of the toe, whereas on the Pegasus Trails, they're a little more on the dorsum of the foot as well as all the way across the medial and lateral sides of the shoe. Now, you would think the Ultras would trap heat a little bit more. However, on the infrared test, the difference was really negligible, and I really think it's just because the Ultra is a little bit lighter, so you're not moving around as much shoe, whereas the Ultras are 10.4 ounces for a size 9. The Pegasus is about 11.1 ounces for a size 9. Now, I did notice that in terms of water resistance, the Ultras were a little bit more initially water resistant because of the lack of breathing channels on the top of the shoe. However, I found that because of all that air exchange on the Pegasus, that they did dry out a little bit faster than the Ultras once they were wet. And in terms of ankle collars, the Ultras are a traditional three-piece, which does tie down really well. The Nike Pegasus is a modified slipper tongue. Now that is neoprene, so it is a little bit slicker, so your feet are just gonna move around just a tad more in that shoe versus the Ultras. Now on the upper durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, the Nike Pegasus Trail 2 actually did really well. It did not get through even the first layer of that mesh. So even though that mesh is really light on the Nikes, it is super durable. But on the upper durability test of the Altra Lone Peaks, you can see it did get through that first layer. However, this is just a little bit of a thicker toe cap, so it will give you a similar durability profile. It's just you will get a little bit more wear from abrasion. On the midsole teardown, starting with the Nike Pegasus, you can see that large stack of React foam with that 1 centimeter heel to toe drop. React foam is an interesting blend of thermoplastics, open cell foam, and closed cell EVA, which gives you a lot of absorptive properties, but also quite a bit of elasticity and memory. And even though I'm not a huge fan of React foam in their tennis shoe line, it does really work well with running shoes because the consistent loading and unloading pattern of a runner's gait cycle lends itself to this more absorptive and, for lack of a better word, reactive foam. But no internal or external shank, so although flat-footed runners can use these, if you have a significant issue with painful overpronation, such as painful flat feet or shin splints, these won't really do much to stabilize you, so if you're going to buy them and you're in that category, best to put an orthotic in as well. You also get a great view of that modified three-piece hybrid slipper tongue, which lines the whole shoe, but what you don't see are those breathing channels, so that's another reason why the infrared test was similar, as those channels don't actually go the whole way through the shoe. And on the teardown of the Lone Peaks, you see that zero-drop midsole with that Ultra Ego foam, which is again a mixture of thermopolyurethane and EVA, which is a really popular mixture when it comes to giving a shoe forgiveness but also responsiveness. And again, no internal or external shank, so same lack of medial support, but given the last of these shoes plus the zero drop, they do stay pretty darn stable, so an orthotic will really go a long way in these shoes in particular. And testing out those midsole foams in the jump test, see how bouncy, how much energy return they give you, the Altra Lone Peaks got 29 centimeters of jump height, which is actually really good for a zero-drop shoe with no shank. Now, the Nike Pegasus did get 34 centimeters of jump height. Now, these shoes do sit up a little bit higher on the ground. However, that React foam just does give you that little bit more springiness when coming up and just a little bit more cushion when coming back down. However, both shoes, for what they are and how they're engineered, really great jump heights. Now, there are some big differences in the outsole treads as well. Number one and most important, the last construction. The Ultra is a little more of a straight last, whereas on the Nike Pegasus, a little bit more of an in-flared last. The Ultras also have a wider midfoot section than the Pegasus. Now, both these two shoes have a similar tread depth. The actual treads on the Nike Pegasus are just spaced a little bit closer together versus on the Altra Lone Peak 5.0, which are spaced a little bit further apart and they're a little bit more strategic. I really do like the tread outcroppings here on the metatarsal heads. I did feel like I got a little bit more of a tactile sensation from the Ultras versus on the Nike Pegasus. Although I did like the distal tip of the outsole on the Nikes a lot more than the Ultras, I just thought that that toe box guard made of all outsole material just gave me a lot more confidence my foot wasn't going to get impaled, or if I was going into jagged terrain that I wasn't going to rip the shoe up, versus on the Ultra where you do get a little bit of toe box protection but not nearly like on the Pegasus. And on the outsole durability test with the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, the Nike Pegasus only 1.5 millimeters of damage, which is just outstanding durability. But on the Altra Lone Peak 5.0's durability test, only 1 millimeter of damage on the outsole. So both these shoes have really rugged, aggressive outsoles. The Altra Lone Peak 5.0, just a little bit more resistance to wear. On the strike test, I did find that even though these are good for heel strikers, the Lone Peak 5.0 is best for midfoot and forefoot strikers. Number one, because the midfoot is pretty wide and stable, and it does have a decent stack of foam in that mid part of the shoe. But also for forefoot strikers, because it has that anatomic toe box, it does allow you to disperse energy a lot better and allows the ball of your foot and forefoot to splay, which means you're not going to be putting weight on one part of your foot all the time when you come down. That energy is dispersed. So you're going to leave yourself a little bit less prone for stress fractures if you are a forefoot striker. Whereas in the Nike Pegasus Trail 2, even though it does have a nice stack in the forefoot of foam, I did find that because of the drop in the shoe when you are forefoot striking, your toe just does jam into the toe box a little bit. Your foot just does slide a little bit into that toe box. However, for midfoot and especially true heel strikers, this shoe just does give you a ton of rebound and a ton of feedback. So if you are a midfoot and especially a true heel striker, this shoe is just going to give you the ultimate in response. Now the fit of the Altra Lone Peak 5.0 is really interesting. It has that anatomic toe box, which is designed after an actual human foot, not just a laser cut tapered forefoot, which I love because your toes are really able to expand and your midfoot is able to expand a little bit more too. Now the shoe is not tapered. It will fit a medium, wide, and narrow foot. However, I would do a runner's knot in the ankle, especially if you are a narrow foot, because if you are super narrow, especially in the heel, you're going to move around a little bit. So I would probably put on 2 pairs of socks and do the runner's knot in these, that way you stay nice and secure. Now the Ultras had no break-in time. However, if you are a high arched foot, given that zero drop, you may end up bottoming these shoes out in the heel and the forefoot just a little bit faster than some others. Now the Nike Pegasus Trail 2 is going to have a little bit more of a tapered fit. However, it will accommodate a narrow, medium, and wide width foot. It will accommodate narrow feet a little bit better than the Ultra. However, I have a 2E width foot and I fit into these just fine with zero break-in time. But if you are somebody with heel pain or Achilles issues, the Nike Pegasus Trail is going to be a lot more accommodative because of the stack of foam in the heel, as well as that React foam that accommodates a lot more of that shock than on the Ultras. Now when it comes to runability, even though these are 2 of the most popular trail running shoes on the market right now, they could not be more different when it comes to their actual running characteristics. Because if you're looking for a trail running shoe that can double as a road running shoe, I would argue the Nike Pegasus Trail 2 is one of the best, if not the best shoe for multi-use running. And if you're a runner that's just looking for a little bit more assistance with your run, a little bit more assistance with propulsion, a little more forgiveness when you're coming and landing, whether it be if you're a heel striker, midfoot striker, or forefoot striker, that stack of foam in the heel as well as the React foam in the mid part of the shoe just does give you a little bit more of a pop off your step, a little bit more velocity when you're trying to push off, and it gives you a lot more forgiveness when you are coming back down. Whereas the Altra Lone Peak 5.0s are more of a true trail or mountain running shoe. These are meant to be ran in the dirt or natural surfaces. I really would not want to have these on asphalt or concrete. But where the Ultras really start to pull away from Nike in terms of pure trail running is in the outsole and last construction. On the Ultras, you have a much wider midfoot and more intuitive tread placement, so you really can feel the ground a lot better. I feel like I had a lot better tactile sensation in the Ultras than in the Nikes, especially when I was going over uneven surfaces or when I was running over kind of ice-covered ponds, or especially when I was going over the train track ruts. I really never felt like I was out of control in the Ultras. I never really felt like I had a risk of rolling my ankle, whereas in the Nike Pegasus Trail, I did have a few times where I was going over some uneven surfaces that because of that stack of foam and just because of the placement of the treads, I almost felt like I was starting to roll my ankle. I kind of had to course correct, whereas in the Ultras, I really just could focus on my run and just having fun because these shoes kind of really did the work for me in terms of that tactile sensation, giving my brain a lot more of that biofeedback versus on the Nikes where with all that foam underneath of you, you don't get a lot of that tactile sensation and tactile feedback. And if I had to describe these 2 shoes in one word, the Ultras would be stable and the Nikes would be propulsive. Whereas the Altra Lone Peak 5.0 is going to be a lot better on more unpredictable trails, or maybe you're blazing your own trail, or if you're doing true mountain running, or maybe you're off the beaten path a little bit. The Nike Pegasus Trail 2 is just going to do a lot better on more of the predictable terrain or more of the groomed trails. This shoe is just going to give you a little bit more longevity out of your feet than the Altra Lone Peak 5.0. However, the Altra Lone Peak 5.0 is just going to give you a little bit more ruggedness and a little bit more traction and grippiness when you're out there, maybe blazing your own path. And so whereas both these shoes deserve a recommendation from me, both as a foot doctor and avid trail runner, they just fit much different running styles and running profiles. But of course, I'd love to know down in the comments below, are you more of an Altra Lone Peak 5.0 runner or a Nike Pegasus Trail 2 runner? And if you want to see more running shoes go through the knife, make sure you stick around because New Balance and On go through the gauntlet starting next week. I'll see you in the next video.